I woke up, or at least I tried to. But the world outside my bedroom felt impossibly heavy, like wading through water that had somehow solidified overnight. The alarm clock blinked its merciless 7 a.m., but I didn't move. Not an inch. I couldn't. And honestly, I didn't want to. A low growl rumbled beneath the sheets, followed by a soft nudge. My eyes cracked open, revealing the deep brown, almost human-like gaze of Rufus, my Labrador mix, who had made it his personal mission to ensure I stayed exactly where I was. My loyal, stubborn, four-legged alarm system. Rufus, I whispered, more to myself than to him. I need to get up. He tilted his head, ears perking, and leaned his massive head against my chest. His eyes weren't just looking at me. They were judging me, weighing my excuses, weighing my very soul. I could almost hear his thoughts. Nope. Not today, Clara. Not today. I tried to shift carefully, so as not to provoke him into a full-blown cuddle-turn tussle, but he flopped sideways, sprawling across my torso like a furry, immovable boulder. My chest rose and fell against his thick coat, and I felt the warmth of him radiate through me. I couldn't get up. Not that I wanted to, really. And that was exactly what he knew. This wasn't the first time. Some mornings, Rufus would act like a playful guardian angel, stopping me from leaving bed with gentle nudges or warm snuggles. But other mornings, he was a tyrant in fur. And today felt like one of those mornings. I sighed and let my head fall back onto the pillow. I don't even know why I try, I muttered. You're going to win, every time. A soft whine escaped him, almost pitiful, but it was manipulative in its own way. He wasn't whining because he was sad. He was whining because he knew that whining would work. And it did. Every time. I gave in. The sun had already started to creep through the blinds, cutting golden lines across the room. Dust motes danced lazily in the light. Everything in the room looked ordinary, familiar, but I felt like I was underwater, trapped between sleep and obligation. The world outside my bedroom was moving, bustling, people leaving homes and getting on with their lives. And I wasn't. I wasn't moving. Why am I like this? I whispered to no one in particular. My voice sounded small in the room. I could almost hear Rufus's internal judgment, that unspoken accusation he seemed to deliver with every paw he pressed against my chest. You're letting life pass by again, Clara. It wasn't exactly a lie. Lately, life had been passing by too quickly, or maybe too slowly. I could never decide which. Work emails piled up, friends called or texted, trying to pull me into the world outside my apartment. But I couldn't. Some days, I felt like my body was glued to the mattress, my mind trapped in the haze of my own indecision and fear. And Rufus. Well, Rufus was my reminder of it all. Not a cruel reminder. Not really. But a living one. He shifted, again, letting out a soft grunt as if to say, "Stop talking. Just lie here with me. You need this." And for a moment, I considered giving in fully, closing my eyes again, letting the day slide past me unnoticed. Maybe that was easier. Maybe that was exactly why he was here, to make me stop. I pressed my palm against his warm, dense fur. "You're impossible," I murmured. "You know that, don't you?" He wagged his tail, just barely, like a tiny concession that maybe, just maybe, he would let me wiggle an inch closer to freedom, if I tried hard enough. But freedom was an illusion when Rufus decided to enforce the rules. I squinted toward the door, the gap between my bed and the rest of my life, the small universe outside that seemed increasingly unreachable. A deep, unshakable anxiety churned in my stomach. Not the dramatic kind, not the scene-stealing kind you see in movies. No, this was quiet, insidious. It crept into the edges of my mind, whispering that I wasn't ready, that maybe I'd never be ready. And Rufus, he knew. He always knew. Finally, after several minutes of intense staring, he rolled over onto his back, paws in the air, forcing me to move to avoid being squished completely. His eyes never left mine, not for a second. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't want to get up. Not because I was lazy, not really, but because I was scared. Scared of the world, scared of failure, scared of letting anyone see me crumble. And somehow, that fear had manifested in a creature with fur, eyes like molten chocolate, and the uncanny ability to read me better than any therapist, friend, or stranger ever could. I exhaled slowly, letting my hands sink into his soft belly. "Okay," I whispered. "Fine. I'll stay a little longer." And that was all it took. Rufus sighed, a contented, victorious sigh, and nudged his head back onto my chest. I felt his warmth seep into my skin, and for a moment, it was perfect. Not ordinary perfect, not Instagram perfect, just right. The sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand broke the spell. I flinched. Rufus's ears perked up, then fell back down. The screen glowed with the name Emma. I hesitated. She was my neighbor, my friend, and sometimes my personal tornado of energy and questions. "Hey, you're awake?" she probably asked. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I wanted to be rude, but because I didn't want to break the fragile bubble I shared with Rufus. My fingers hovered over the screen, and I imagined her, bright face, full of questions and plans I wasn't sure I was ready to join. Rufus pressed a paw against my arm, as if to remind me, no, not yet. I laughed softly, the sound breaking the quiet tension in the room. "You're ridiculous," I said to him, even though he was clearly winning. The truth was, I didn't know how I got here. My life had always felt full, even when it was chaotic. I had friends, a decent job, a small apartment that smelled faintly of lavender and old books. But somewhere along the way, I had started waking up in the mornings and feeling nothing. Or worse, feeling too much. The kind of emotional weight that made getting out of bed feel like trying to climb a mountain with a backpack full of bricks. And Rufus, well, he was the only one who understood. I reached down to scratch behind his ears. "You and me, huh?" I said softly. "We're in this together." He responded with a small, contented groan, then rolled onto his side, nudging me with his nose. I felt a sudden jolt of affection, sharp and electric, the kind that makes your chest tighten with warmth and gratitude. I had tried explaining him to other people, but no one understood. He wasn't just a dog, he was something more. A guardian, a companion, a living reminder that I wasn't entirely alone in the world. The phone buzzed again. Emma. I glanced at it. "Coffee?" it read. Just one word. Simple. Easy. Innocuous. And yet I felt a pang of panic. The outside world, waiting for me, with all its noise and light and expectation. I could feel Rufus's eyes on me, almost daring me to ignore it. Almost daring me to break my sacred morning truce. I hesitated. One word, one tiny decision. And then, as if sensing my hesitation, Rufus nudged my shoulder with his head, gently but firmly. "I've got you," his expression seemed to say. "I'll be here, but only if you want me to be." I laughed quietly to myself, shaking my head. "You're unbelievable," I whispered. "Absolutely, completely, insanely unbelievable." And for the first time that morning, I felt a small, dangerous spark of courage. Not enough to leave the bed, not yet. But enough to know, maybe today I could try. Rufus pressed closer, his body a warm anchor against mine, and I realized, This morning, like so many mornings before, was a negotiation. A delicate balance of trust, comfort, and the silent understanding that some battles weren't worth fighting. Some victories were just waking up slowly, with someone, or something, by your side. And so, I stayed. For now. But I knew the world outside my bedroom wouldn't wait forever, and neither would Rufus. The morning stretched on, slow and deliberate, with Rufus sprawled across my chest like a living fortress. I knew the world outside my bedroom wasn't waiting patiently for me. It never did. I could hear distant traffic, the faint hum of neighbors starting their day, even the occasional bark of another dog echoing from somewhere down the street. All of it whispered, "Move, Clara. The world is out there." I glanced at the phone again. Emma's message was still there. Coffee? Simple. Friendly. Insistent. And in my current state, threatening. I wanted to reply. I wanted to say yes. But I also wanted to stay cocooned in the warmth of the bed, with Rufus's steady breathing and the comforting weight of him pressing against me. Rufus growled softly, a warning, or maybe a reminder. He wasn't an ordinary dog. He never was. Something in his eyes, sharp and unflinching, made me pause. He sensed things, feelings, movements, intentions. And right now, he sensed that I might try to leave him behind. I sighed and swung my legs over the edge of the bed. Immediately, Rufus shifted, low growl rumbling through his chest. His massive paws planted firmly on the mattress, blocking my escape route like a furry, immovable barricade. No, 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 I muttered under my breath, half laughing, half panicking. We're negotiating, Rufus. It's a negotiation, okay? He blinked at me slowly, his gaze unwavering, like he was calculating the exact moment I would break. "I'm not letting you," his eyes said. And I knew he meant it. It was ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. But also, kind of beautiful. The loyalty in his eyes, the fierce love, the protective instinct, it was intoxicating. I couldn't explain it to anyone else. Most people would roll their eyes, call it a spoiled dog or clingy. But Rufus, he was different. He felt like an extension of my own soul, the part I didn't even realize I needed to protect. I pushed myself up inch by inch, and Rufus followed every movement with sharp attentiveness. His head tilted, ears pricked. The growl deepened, soft but insistent. "You're insane," I said, half smiling, shaking my head. "Completely insane." He wagged his tail, almost imperceptibly, as if to say, "And you love me for it." I laughed quietly, the sound echoing in the bedroom like a fragile attempt at normalcy. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Emma. "Seriously. Coffee. I'll even bring pastries. Please?" I bit my lip. Part of me longed to go. Part of me feared the outside world more than I could put into words. There was something waiting for me beyond that door. Something I couldn't quite see, couldn't quite name. And Rufus, he was warning me, protecting me. I tried to reason with him. "Look, buddy, it's just a walk. Across the street. To Emma's. Nothing dangerous, nothing life-threatening. You'll survive without me for an hour." His growl deepened. Not menacing, protective, territorial even. I felt it in my bones. "No, you stay. Not today." I froze, hand on the doorknob, my mind racing. What was I afraid of? The world? Failure? Social interaction? Or was it something else? Something I couldn't see yet? Lurking just beyond the familiar safety of my apartment? Rufus nudged me with his snout, firmly but gently. I couldn't move. Not forward, not back. He was an anchor and a barrier all at once. I sank back onto the bed, exhaling sharply. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, I'll stay." For a moment, I let myself relax. The warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the simple fact that he was there. It was a balm. The world outside could wait. It always could. But then a shadow of doubt crept in. The hum of the city, the distant barking, the phone buzzing yet again. All reminders that life was still moving, still pressing in, still calling. And maybe I couldn't hide forever. I stared at Rufus. His eyes were calm, steady, unwavering. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I didn't just feel safe with him. I felt trapped, not by him, not entirely, but by the comfort he represented, by the life I had allowed myself to shrink into. I pressed my fingers into his fur, as if holding on to him could somehow anchor me to reality, while also keeping me safe from it. I don't know if I can do this, I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I'm ready. His tail thumped against the mattress almost impatiently. You'll never be ready if you don't try. I shivered. It wasn't cold in the room. It was the weight of fear. Fear that I couldn't shake. And yet, under it all, there was a flicker of something else. A spark. Courage, maybe. Or desperation. Or the strange, inexplicable hope that if I just moved, something might change. I reached for the door again. Rufus growled. His body stiffened, muscles tense, ready to block me. I froze, staring at him. He's not kidding, I thought. He really won't let me go. The phone buzzed again. This time a call, Emma. I ignored it. Rufus' eyes followed the phone, then me, then back again, like he was reading my every thought. I flopped onto the bed beside him, burying my face into his fur. Why are you like this? I asked. Why can't I just leave? He nudged my hand, warm and insistent. Because you need me here. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. But the truth was undeniable. Without him, I felt like I'd crumble. Without him, I felt like I might disappear entirely. Minutes passed. The city outside grew louder, more insistent. I could hear the distant hum of life, the subtle rhythm of people moving, living, existing in a world I felt increasingly separate from. And yet I stayed. Rufus's body pressed against mine, his eyes fixed on mine, unyielding. Finally, I sighed and reached for the phone. Texting Emma would be a compromise, a small bridge to the world outside. Not today, maybe tomorrow. Simple. Safe. Honest. I typed slowly, fingers trembling slightly. Rufus nudged the phone with his nose, almost as if checking my work. No mistakes, his eyes said. Be careful, I sent it. The screen dimmed, and for a moment silence fell between us. Just the quiet of our apartment, the muted sounds of the city beyond, and the slow, steady rhythm of Rufus breathing. I felt a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. Relief that I hadn't had to face the outside world. Disappointment that I still couldn't. Rufus shifted, laying his massive head on my shoulder. You're ridiculous, I whispered again, half laughing. Completely ridiculous. And yet, as I looked down at him, I realized he wasn't ridiculous. Not at all. He was necessary. My tether to the world and my shield from it all at once. The one constant in a life that felt increasingly uncertain. I buried my face in his fur, letting the tension drain out of me, letting the warmth of him anchor me. The world outside could wait. It always did. For now, at least, I was safe. But even as I lay there, I felt it. The faint, almost imperceptible stir of anxiety in my chest. The tug of the outside world, insistent, pressing, demanding attention. And I knew, deep down, that I couldn't hide forever. Rufus nudged me again, softly this time, almost encouragingly. One step at a time, he seemed to say. We'll face it together. I nodded, barely aware I was doing it. One step, I whispered. Okay, one step. And as I lay there, tangled in fur and blankets, I realized something terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Maybe today, just maybe, I'd have to try, because no matter how protective, how loyal, how stubborn Rufus was, the world outside was still waiting. And sooner or later, we'd have to face it. The world outside my apartment was brighter than I remembered. The sun had climbed higher, spilling golden light across the street, warming the concrete and the few scattered leaves that clung stubbornly to the sidewalks. It was ordinary, mundane, yet terrifying. Somehow stepping beyond the door felt like crossing a chasm. Rufus stood at my side, leash in his mouth, as if daring me to reconsider. His eyes were sharp, alert, scanning every movement, every shadow. I could feel his muscles tense under my hand. Today, he wasn't just a companion. He was a guardian, a living barrier between me and whatever the outside world might throw at me. I swallowed hard and clipped the leash onto his collar. The familiar jingle of the metal echoed in the hallway, a small reminder that the world was still structured, predictable, and yet, I felt my stomach knot. My apartment had been a sanctuary. Outside, anything could happen. Anything. "Ready?" I asked him, though I knew he wouldn't answer. His wag of a tail was cautious, controlled, almost strategic. He knew what I didn't. Stepping outside wasn't just a simple act. It was a challenge, and he was prepared for it. The door swung open and the sunlight hit me in waves. I squinted, shielding my eyes, and felt the familiar surge of panic bubble up, sharp and unwelcome. Rufus slipped out before me, paws firm on the ground, tail high, moving with confidence I didn't yet feel. I followed, hesitantly, gripping the leash like it was a lifeline. The world smelled different here. Fresh air, faint traces of flowers from someone's garden, the scent of distant food from a nearby cafe. And under it all, the unmistakable odor of life. People, dogs, movement, chaos. Rufus paused, sniffing a corner of the sidewalk, ears pricked. I froze, feeling a sudden sharpness in the pit of my stomach. Someone or something was near. My imagination immediately filled the space with all manner of unseen threats. A man with dark intentions, a dog about to attack, a catastrophe waiting just out of sight. My pulse quickened, heart hammering in my chest. "Rufus," I whispered, voice trembling slightly. "It's okay. It's just people." His head turned slowly, eyes meeting mine, and I felt a curious weight of judgment. Not anger, not annoyance, but a warning. "Be careful," he seemed to say. "The world is not as soft as your bed." I forced myself to take a step forward, then another, and another. Each movement felt monumental, like I was crossing some invisible line from safety into uncertainty. Rufus stayed at my side, calm and attentive, his presence steadying me, reminding me that I wasn't alone. The park came into view, a green oasis in the midst of the concrete city. Trees swayed gently in the breeze, birds chirped in irregular melodies, and a few people strolled along the paths, some walking dogs, others jogging or chatting. It should have felt normal, familiar even, but I felt like a stranger in my own life. Rufus tugged slightly on the leash, pulling me toward the path. "Okay," I muttered, trying to summon courage. One step at a time, one step at a time. And then, as we reached the first bend of the path, something moved in the shadows beneath the trees. A sudden flash of motion, a squirrel maybe or something larger, jerked Rufus forward. He barked sharply, muscles coiled, and I stumbled, gripping the leash tightly. My heart raced. "Easy," I breathed, trying to calm both him and myself, but the world seemed suddenly alive with potential dangers. Every rustle, every distant sound, felt amplified, as if the park itself was conspiring to test me. Rufus pressed against me, alert and unyielding, ready to react to anything. And in that moment, I realized just how much I depended on him, not just for protection from the world, but for the courage to face it at all. We continued down the path, Rufus leading, me following. The rhythm of his movements, the certainty in his steps, began to calm my own nerves. Slowly, I started to notice the details around me, the smell of wet earth, the rough texture of bark under my fingertips, the faint laughter of children playing near the swings. Life was moving, existing, continuing, and for the first time in weeks I felt a small, cautious connection to it. And then it happened. A sudden movement in the brush to our left, a flash of white fur, a barking sound, rapid and aggressive. Rufus stiffened, growling low in his throat. My pulse spiked. My instincts screamed at me to pull back, to retreat, to flee into the safety of my apartment. But Rufus wouldn't let me. Not yet. He planted himself firmly between me and the disturbance, body rigid, eyes locked on the unseen threat. He barked again, louder, more forceful, as if issuing a warning. And then I saw it. A dog, larger than Rufus, bounding out from the shadows, teeth bared, eyes wild. I froze. My hands trembled on the leash. The world seemed to shrink to the space between Rufus and the other dog, every instinct screaming at me to panic. But Rufus didn't panic. He stood his ground, chest out, growl low and steady, a force of unwavering courage. I realized then something profound. He wasn't just protecting me from the dog. He was protecting me from my own fear. The other dog barked again, charging closer. I stumbled backward, and Rufus barked sharply, his command clear and unyielding. The dogs circled each other briefly, tension crackling in the air like static electricity. I wanted to scream, to run, to collapse, but I didn't. Rufus's presence anchored me, reminded me that I could face this, that I wasn't alone. After what felt like an eternity, the other dog's owner appeared, leash in hand, shouting apologies. The dog backed off, finally restrained. Rufus lowered his body but remained alert, eyes tracking every movement. My legs shook, but I breathed slowly, trying to regain composure. "That was intense," I whispered, voice barely audible. Rufus nudged me, warm and reassuring. "You're okay. You survived." I laughed shakily, leaning down to scratch behind his ears. "You're unbelievable," I said. "Absolutely unbelievable." We continued our walk, slower now, cautious. My heart still pounded in my chest, but each step felt a little lighter. The world wasn't just chaos. It was full of life, unpredictable and wild, yes, but also rich with textures, sounds, and scents I had forgotten existed. And Rufus, he was my guide, my protector, my anchor. As we reached a small bench near the pond, I let Rufus rest, sitting down beside him. The water shimmered in the sunlight, ducks gliding lazily across the surface. For a brief moment, the world felt manageable again. I could breathe. I could exist. I could be. Rufus rested his head on my lap, eyes softening, tail thumping lazily against the ground. And I realized something. This was more than a walk. This was a test, a challenge, a negotiation between fear and courage, anxiety and trust. And I was learning, slowly, tentatively, that I could meet it. A sudden rustle from the nearby bushes made me jump again. Rufus barked, alert and immediate. My heart raced, but this time, I didn't stumble back. I stayed, I faced it, and when a small rabbit darted out and ran across the path, I laughed, relief spilling over me like sunlight breaking through clouds. "You're ridiculous," I whispered, laughing softly at Rufus, who wagged his tail, eyes bright and proud. "Completely, utterly ridiculous." And yet, I meant it as a compliment. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt alive, not entirely, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to know that stepping outside, facing my fears, and trusting someone, or something, could change everything. We continued our walk, slower now, careful, but with a sense of shared purpose. Rufus led, alert and watchful, and I followed, step by step, learning to trust him, and in a way, learning to trust myself. The park stretched out before us, a mix of light and shadow, life and possibility. And for the first time that day, I realized something profound. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was moving forward in spite of it. And with Rufus at my side, maybe, just maybe, I could keep moving. The apartment was quiet, save for the gentle hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the building settling. Darkness had fallen, wrapping the world outside in shadow. Inside, my sanctuary felt simultaneously safe and suffocating. I should have felt relief, but instead, a tight knot of anxiety gripped my chest, twisting every breath. Rufus was at my feet, as usual, his body a comforting weight against the floor. I stroked his fur absent-mindedly, trying to calm the storm brewing in my mind. But it was no use. Memories, fears, and what-ifs pressed in from every angle, threatening to pull me under. I glanced at the clock. Dynamem, the late hour should have brought peace, a sense of stillness. Instead, it felt like a countdown to an invisible catastrophe. My heartbeat accelerated, my palms grew clammy. I could feel panic rising, a creeping, suffocating presence that I hadn't felt in weeks, or perhaps months. And Rufus knew. He shifted, low growl vibrating in his chest, eyes fixed on me. I could almost hear the unspoken question in his gaze. Are you okay, Clara? I shook my head, whispering, I don't know, Rufus. I can't. He patted closer, nuzzling my hand, and then rested his massive head on my shoulder. I felt the warmth of him seep into my skin, his steady breathing a tether to reality. Slowly, the panic ebbed slightly, but I knew it could return at any moment, unpredictable as the night itself. I had been managing it better lately, venturing outside, trusting Rufus, facing the world in small steps. But the night had a way of stripping away progress, leaving only raw emotion. And tonight, for reasons I couldn't name, the fear had returned with a vengeance. I pressed my face into Rufus's fur, seeking comfort, and whispered, I don't want to do this alone. He gave a low, reassuring growl as if to say, You're not alone. Not ever. Minutes passed. The darkness pressed in from the windows, the streetlights outside casting long, uncertain shadows across the floor. I tried to focus on the present, grounding myself in Rufus's warmth, his steady heartbeat beneath my palm. But my thoughts spiraled anyway, dark and persistent, like tendrils of smoke curling around my mind. I imagined every possible disaster, the apartment catching fire, someone breaking in, me falling and no one noticing. My chest tightened, breaths coming in shallow, panicked bursts. Rufus shifted again, pressing closer, nuzzling my face gently, as though reminding me to breathe, to live in the moment. I obeyed, slowly inhaling and exhaling, letting the rhythm of his presence anchor me. Okay, I whispered. Okay, we can do this, together. The sound of my phone buzzing startled me. I jerked my head toward the nightstand, heart hammering. It was Dr. Harris, my therapist. The timing felt uncanny, almost as if he had sensed my panic before I even did. I answered, voice trembling. Hello? Clara, he said calmly, his voice steady and grounding. I thought I'd check in. How's your evening? I swallowed, blinking back tears. It's hard, I admitted. I don't know why tonight feels worse than others. He didn't interrupt, just let me speak, and I felt an odd sense of relief. Finally, someone was listening. Finally, someone could acknowledge that the night could be cruel, even when the days were manageable. I'm here with Rufus, I said finally, voice quieter now, more confessional. He won't leave me, and I don't want him to, but I feel trapped, panicked, and I don't know how to stop it. Dr. Harris's voice was calm, steady. It's okay to feel that way. Nighttime can amplify our anxieties, but the important thing is you're not facing it alone. Focus on what's real, the present, the here, the safety you have, and trust Rufus. He's doing exactly what he should, keeping you grounded. I exhaled slowly, feeling the panic loosen its grip, even if just slightly. He's incredible, I whispered, leaning into Rufus, feeling his steady warmth against me. I don't know what I'd do without him. You're not alone, Dr. Harris repeated, and you're stronger than you think. Just breathe, Clara. One moment at a time. I ended the call and let myself sink fully onto the couch, Rufus at my side, his body a reassuring weight against mine. I realized then that this was more than just fear. It was a lesson, a test of trust. Trust in myself, trust in the world, trust in Rufus. The night was still, but something shifted. The tension remained, yes, but there was also a quiet determination growing inside me. I would not let panic define me. I would not let the dark consume me. Not tonight. A sudden noise from the window made me freeze. A shadow moved outside, brief and swift, almost imperceptible. Rufus snapped his head toward the sound, growl low and cautious. My heart raced again, but this time I didn't panic. I stayed, trusting Rufus's instincts and my own newfound resilience. The shadow passed. The street remained quiet, and slowly the fear ebbed, replaced by a cautious vigilance. I realized that being afraid didn't mean being powerless. It meant being alert, being aware, and having the courage to face whatever came. Rufus leaned against me, head resting on my lap, tail thumping lazily against the floor. I stroked his fur, feeling the solidity of him, the unspoken promise that no matter what happened, I wouldn't face it alone. Minutes stretched into hours. The night deepened, shadows lengthening across the floor, and yet, For the first time, I felt a strange sense of peace. Not complete peace. Fear and uncertainty were still present, but a balance. A fragile, tentative balance between anxiety and courage, darkness and light. I closed my eyes, letting Rufus's warmth envelop me, letting the steady rhythm of his breathing calm my own. The city outside hummed softly, distant and unthreatening now, and I realized that maybe, just maybe, I could survive the night. Suddenly, a sharp sound, a crash, like something hitting the side of the building, made me jump. Rufus barked, alert and fierce, ears pricked. I held my breath, heart hammering, unsure if it was real danger or just the building settling. I leaned into Rufus, letting him guide my response. His body was rigid, ready, but controlled. He wasn't panicking, and I realized that my own fear could be controlled too, as long as I trusted him and trusted myself. I whispered, "We can handle this, Rufus, together." He gave a low, approving growl, and for a moment, the world outside seemed less threatening. Not safe, never completely safe, but manageable. We were alive and we were facing it. I reached for a blanket, wrapping myself and Rufus in warmth. He rested his head on my shoulder, eyes soft, vigilant, unwavering, and as I drifted into a light, uneasy sleep, I realized something important. Courage didn't mean the absence of fear. It meant standing firm in the face of it, and with Rufus at my side, I could face anything. The night was long, shadows shifting, the world outside uncertain, but for the first time I felt ready to meet it. One moment at a time, one breath at a time, guided by the steadfast loyalty of my dog. And somewhere in the darkness, I knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fears, but also new victories. Rufus nudged me gently, waking me briefly. His eyes, bright and unwavering, met mine. A warning? A reminder? I wasn't sure, but I understood. We would face whatever came next together, and I was beginning to understand that maybe that was enough. The morning sunlight spilled across the living room, warm and golden. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't hesitate to get out of bed. Rufus stretched beside me, tail wagging as if he knew today would be different. "Ready, buddy?" I asked, clipping on his leash without a second thought. He barked softly, a playful, approving sound, as if answering, "Finally." The streets outside smelled of spring, fresh grass, blooming flowers, and the faint aroma of coffee from the cafe around the corner. It was ordinary and yet miraculous, because today I felt capable, alive, present. Rufus led the way as we walked, ears perked, eyes scanning, but he no longer pulled me back with protective insistence. Today he walked beside me, not in front. I realized then that he had taught me more than loyalty. He had taught me trust. Trust in him. And, more importantly, trust in myself. At the park, sunlight danced on the pond, ducks gliding lazily across the surface. Children laughed in the distance, dogs barked happily, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged in the rhythm of life around me. Rufus chased a ball, tongue lolling, completely unbothered by the world. I laughed freely, without hesitation, a sound I hadn't heard in weeks. Emma waved from a nearby bench, pastries in hand. "Finally," she called. I smiled, walking toward her with Rufus at my side. The fear that had gripped me for so long felt lighter, almost distant. I was stepping into life again, and it was beautiful. We shared coffee, laughter spilling between sips, and for a moment the world seemed simple and kind. I glanced at Rufus, resting his head on my lap, eyes half closed in contentment. My guardian, my anchor, my teacher. Later, Milo stopped by unexpectedly, teasing me about finally emerging from my cocoon. I laughed along, letting the warmth of friendship wash over me. Life wasn't perfect, life never would be, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to meet it fully. As the afternoon faded into evening, Rufus and I returned home, the familiar comfort of the apartment welcoming us. He flopped onto the floor, tail thumping lazily, while I sat nearby, notebook in hand. I had ideas, plans, things I had shelved for too long. Today, I was ready to start again. And yet, as I reached for the window to draw the curtains against the fading sunlight, I noticed a shadow flicker just beyond the glass. A subtle movement, almost too quick to see, like something, or someone, was watching. Rufus's ears twitched. He rose, alert and focused, a low growl vibrating through his chest. I froze, heart quickening. "Not tonight," I whispered, unsure if it was a promise or a warning. And then I realized, whatever tomorrow might bring, whatever unknowns lurked just beyond the edges of my carefully rebuilt life, I wouldn't face them alone, not with Rufus, not ever. But still, my pulse quickened, and a shiver of anticipation ran down my spine. Because the world had a way of surprising you when you least expected it, and I had learned to never underestimate it.